Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Rogue Deck Chronicles. I am Dean, and I have Devin with me.
Hey guys, hope everyone's having a wonderful day so far.
Yeah, it's still getting used to daylight savings. It's been kicking my butt.
I mean, it's only for us over here in the States. There's still a lot of the world that doesn't have it yet. So,
Yeah, so it, I've been tired, but it is what it is. Been a light week for Pokemon for me. I played in a GLC tournament. Um, Didn't do too well with it. I got 3rd, but I went 1-1-1, so,
I mean,
but anything Pokemon with you?
I did Coco Community Day on the weekend. Got my three. I got four shiny Coco in like an hour, not even, and kind of just relaxed. Did some stuff. I started playing around the road deck of the week this week, so that was kind of like my TCG project for the weekend.
Mhm.
And I'm honestly excited to talk about its potential, but also its drawbacks. Because I think the card we picked this week definitely shows and emphasizes how much the format has adjusted in terms of certain key mechanics over the last couple weeks.
Yeah, I played around with that deck a little bit too, and yeah, that conversation is gonna be very, very interesting and very nice. But I am a little confused about what we're gonna be talking about with today's episode. Like, you were texting me and calling me saying something about, like, bringing tools and going on a trip together. I got a backpack ready.
I
Like,
mean,
what are
yes,
we doing?
yes, you are going on a trip soon, but no, we're gonna this week for the Rogue Deck How to Train a Rogue series. We definitely want to talk about Pokemon tool cards and talk about stadiums and how they will impact what you're
There
looking
we go.
for a deck build. Absolutely.
But what about you said about going on a trip together or going on a journey or something?
I
What does that
mean,
have to do with this week's episode?
this weekend this weekend from time of recording, we have Journey Together pre-releases starting, so I figured it'd be a good opportunity for us to talk about some other cards in the set list. I know we've talked about trainer cards in the past,
Mhm.
and the in the description in the show notes we'll reference that episode of the podcast. But I wanted to focus on the non-trainer cards of this set because we're going to get pre-releases soon. We want to know what cards we maybe want to build cards around, or even just things of note that aren't the trainer cards to look at when you are pulling your packs for sure.
Yeah, so as Devin mentioned, Journey Together is coming out soon. Um, there will be pre-release events going on, so check your local game store and see if they're having any of these events. And we'll kind of go through some of these cards. I know we talked about a lot of the trainer cards, so that new mechanic is coming in. But outside of that, there are still a lot of Pokemon cards that we haven't talked about that I think will be very impactful either in the standard meta or even in some of the other metas like other formats like GLC and expanded.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll get there. But first, let's talk a little bit about what happened this weekend with two regionals that happened. We
Yeah.
won't really talk much about them because for these two regions, it was our last regional until rotation, which is coming up in about a month at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So there were a regional in Canada in Vancouver, and then a regional down in Brazil in Fortaleza. Think I'm saying that right?
Saying it better than I can. So.
So, one interesting thing about both these regionals is that they were both won using Dragapult EX.
Yeah, but I would say neither one of these Dragapults are the same.
Oh no. So, let's look at the first place for Vancouver, which is Andrew Hedrick, which he is one of the upcoming stars in the TCG. He is so good. He's only been playing for a couple years, and whenever he goes to a regional, he makes a name. He does always does well. Every finals he's been in, he's won.
Oh
And I
wow.
believe at this point now he's 3-0 when it comes to making finals at a regional, and he's only been doing this for 3 years, I think. So I think that's pretty good record there.
Yeah, and he played this same list at EUIC to 114th, so he definitely was very confident on this list going into it.
Hmm. Yeah, and it looks more or less a straightforward Dragapult list. Playing with the Dustmar line as well. Um, I will say I think the interesting um, thing with the Pokemon lineup at least is the Alakazam. I know you'll see in some Dragapult decks, but you don't see them in a lot. They either choose to play the Charizard or the Alakazam, and I think he went more towards being able to manipulate damage counters than get the closing like KO at the end.
Yeah, I think Radiant Alakazam fixes your math so much more than just a big bomb that a Radiant Charizard would. I think
Mhm.
it gives you more flexibility and more utility throughout the course of the match rather than just a big NKO kind of situation.
Yeah, and he was on stream earlier and he took 4, 6 prizes in one turn just by manipulating the damage on board and being patient and not just going for the KOs every single time. And it shows his maturity as a player and just how much he understands this deck. And let's go over to the first place for Fortaleza, which is won by Vinny Fernandez. Um, Fun fact: him and his brother, who's in the senior division, both won their tournament in their respective divisions this weekend. So the family is definitely a strong family and one to watch out for because both these players are super young.
Oh wow, okay. Yeah, and looking at the list here, so it looks like Vinny's deck opts for not to play the Dusknoir line for some other utility, the Monkey Dory, the Blood Moon,
Hmm.
and kind of just instead of going Psychic Fire, adds that Darkness energy to kind of give that Monkey Dory movement around. Again, more damage counters onto your opponent's side of the board.
Yeah, I like the Ursaluna ad because it helps for the late game, one shot, um, bossing up something like Fezandipiti, Luminian, something 240 or less, and just ending the game really quick. Plays one boss. I'm trying to look at his, and he plays two counter catchers, so he wants to be behind in prizes and trying to clean up at the end. So I believe he played this at EUIC as well.
Yeah, you got
So he got fifth place at EUIC.
top eight. Yeah, I saw that. Like this is a tried and true list for him. Like he wasn't trying to reinvent the wheel by any means.
No, and his brother played this in UIC and winning the senior division with this list at UIC and now won the senior division at this regional. Um, so yeah, it was Dragapult's weekend.
I mean, on top of Dragapult's weekend, let's be completely honest. Like other than what Roaring Moon getting third in Vancouver, the rest of day two is just littered all over the place with the top meta decks in terms of what you expect players to bring to a tournament. And like you said, both these regions, this is the last tournament before rotation, so a lot of these decks, just this was a last hurrah. Like anyone playing Lugia, last hurrah. Anyone playing Palkia VSTAR, last hurrah. So why not give some comfortable deck lists the attention before you can't play them anymore?
Yeah, and you can see Lugia and even Regidrago do fairly well. With Regidrago gaining ninth place, I believe this was a top 12 um, asymmetrical cut. So seeing that make top cut one last time. A couple Lugias made top cut one last time as well. Lost Box doing fairly well as well, getting top 32. So a lot of these decks, yeah, the last hurrah doing well, ending with a bang, and yeah, we'll see how the meta shifts once we get into Atlanta in April for post rotation.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, let's go ahead and just talk about what cards are we getting for Atlanta that are new. Like obviously we're keeping with some of the same decks like Miraidon, Garvar may survive. A lot of people are talking about how it's may or may not. The future is unknown for that deck. but we're getting some really nice cards and really cool archetypes going forward with Journey Together. So let's start our Journey Together review. What do you think, Devin?
I honestly think that to wrap up your Gardevoir topic before we go into Journey Together, I think Gardevoir is going to be on the sideline for maybe this set, and then when the set after comes, or whenever we get the Mega Gardevoir, I think that's when Gardevoir is going to make a reappearance, if it doesn't already re-identify itself before then. So
Yeah,
I think
I can
people
see that
saying
too.
Gardevoir dying is a little premature. I think it just needs to figure out its new identity going forward.
To be fair, they said that at last rotation too, and look at it now. It's probably even stronger than it was before.
Mm-hmm.
So that deck is just very resilient. It just needs time to, like you said, rebrand itself. I don't think Journey Together is a set for that. You made a good point. I think when Mega Gardevoir comes out, whenever that will be probably its new time to shine because those two cards really pair with each other. So, but with that, let's go ahead and let's review some Journey Together and see what cards that you and me are kind of looking out for.
Mm-hmm.
As a precursor, we're not really going to touch on the trainers Pokemon, so nothing with Iono and Hop or Lily. We've kind of talked about that a lot, and I'm sure everyone's talking about the same cards over and over again. So we want to focus on the lesser known cards, the cards that no one's really talking about that you and me are really excited for. And there's a couple decks that we want to build from this set that are
Mm-hmm.
not the trainers Pokemon. So with that, what's the first card you want to talk about?
So let's go in presumably set list order. Now, we don't have the exact list just yet at the time of recording. We are recording a little bit earlier in the week of the pre releases. No one's cracked open an ETB and kind of taken pictures of the deck list from the ETB box. So we're going off base assumptions that the community's kind of put together reasonably. So we're going to go in a certain order. First, we're going to talk about the grass types, because grass is always the first one in any of the lists. And the first card I'm interested in, but because it's a card archetype that I'm really wanting to build when this set comes out, is I'm interested in this Maractus card. So Maractus is going to be 110 HP grass basic Pokemon, and it has the ability Bursting Needle. If this Pokemon is in the active spot and is knocked out by damage from an attack, put 6 damage counters on the attacking Pokemon. Very reminiscent to the Bursting Balloon tool card back in the day, but this does have a very key difference in terms of the text where Bursting Balloon was only on your Pokemon for 1 turn. And if you got
Hmm.
damage, then you put 6 damage counters on the attacking Pokemon. This Maractus is when it gets knocked out by effects by attack damage, then you put 6 damage counters on the attacking Pokemon. So it's a very key difference, but it's a big difference. And then it has an attack for one colorless corner. It only does 20 damage, but it does prevent your defending Pokemon from retreating. So it kind of locks the Pokemon into the active spot for an additional turn. So if you have a poison or burn package, this could add extra damage. But for me, I'm focusing on this card because of its potential synergy with another card in this set that we'll talk about soon.
Yeah, I know we were going through these cards and what we were wanting to talk about, and we ran across this Maractus. I don't know how we missed this. We've been talking about a certain deck for almost a month now and did not realize this card existed. And this kind of shores up a lot of what we were missing from this deck where you and me are thinking about building.
Mm-hmm. I've
Yeah, as a
seen it in
basic,
the list. I just didn't know what set it came from, so I kind of went, okay, when this card becomes a thing, it's to me it's an automatic 2 of in my general list. So I
yeah,
knew it existed. I just didn't know where it came from. I just wasn't paying attention that well.
yeah. I just like how easy it can be set up. It's a basic Pokemon, so we can use it with a Nest Ball. Unfortunately, it is 110 HP, so no Buddy Buddy. But
But isn't Buddy Buddy rotating?
no, that's a Scarlet Violet card.
Oh, I don't know why I keep on thinking it's an older card.
But yeah, with Maractus, this is this is I think a good one off in a lot of decks that need to have those damage counters on there. So we're excited to see where this lands when it comes to the format, if it does make its way into the format.
Hmm.
Um, but next, just scrolling through the grass, I'm not really seeing anything else in grass. The only other Pokemon I'm kind of interested in is Lilligant, with the Sunny Day ability that which reads all your grass and fire Pokemon's attack do 20 more damage to your opponent's active. I'm not really seeing a lot of grass decks or fire decks right now in this format, but thinking of other formats like Gym Leader Challenge, I can see this being played
Yeah,
just to help boost.
boosting your own attacks in GLC is awesome. Like
Yeah.
this is, even if you never really attack with it, I think this would be a good card in GLC grass, especially because there's so many other ways to make this 3 attack cost easy in grass.
Oh yeah, you have the Rillaboom and Venusaur with Rillaboom getting the energy out in play, and then the Venusaur with Jungle Totem with doubling all your energy. So just having two grass on there is more than enough to power this thing up. Yes, it's only doing 60, but with the ability, because with how it's read, it helps with itself too. So you're doing 80.
Yeah,
And
it
then
definitely affect it definitely boosts itself.
yeah, and obviously there's other modifiers that you can play in Gym Leader Challenge to help with getting that attack cost higher, and also with the HP being at 110, there's other Pokemon you can pair with this to bring up that HP as well. So this can be a fairly tanky stage one and a very hard hitting stage one in the Grass Gym Leader Challenge deck. So
Hmm.
I know my friends, we've been talking about this card. We'll see how it shapes up our local GLC meta, if it makes grass even better. I know grass is kind of in a lull phase right now. Once Forza Giant Plants got banned, but
Surprised it wasn't banned sooner, to be honest.
yeah. So I think those are the two main grass Pokemon we want to talk about in this set.
Hmm.
So going on to the next typing, which is fire, which I'm actually excited for two cards with fire right now.
And those cards would be
So I like the Magmortar,
okay.
which is a stage 130 fire type Pokemon. And it's the ability that I like. It's Magna Surge. During Pokemon checkup, put three more damage counters on your opponent's burn Pokemon.
So that
And
means
then
during checkup, your opponent would be getting 5 damage counters on the burn before they do the burn flip.
exactly, which that's a lot for a Pokemon checkup. And I feel like it pairs well with the new Volcanion EX that's coming out, because that has an ability that says once during your turn, if this Pokemon is in your active spot, you may make your opponent's active Pokemon burned. So you get the burn set up with the Volcanion, and then you just let the Magmora sit on your bench and just do the additional 3 damage counters, and you're doing 5 damage counters without even attacking.
That's not too bad. I mean, burn has always been undervalued in the TCG, and I think they're trying to give burn the same attention and the same power ups that they gave poison just a couple sets ago.
Yeah, and I'm gonna let the cat out of the bag. I'm trying to make cloth good again because it loses a lot with post rotation.
Hmm.
And I'm working with some of my buddies like, how can we make this survive? And I'm thinking about adding this burn package because that's nothing new with the cloth deck. Because when you played it before the Shroud of Fables came out, you played it with spicy curry, you played it with the burn package already. So I think it fits well with it, and having the Magmortar on the bench, do the 5 damage counters with the burn, and then you do the additional damage counter with the poison. So you're doing 6, and you pair it with the Petron, and then you're doing 5 more. That's 11. You are KOing a lot of basic Pokemon. If you go first, they don't evolve. You can just bring up the Petron, do that combo, and take out during Pokemon checkup and prevent Fezandipiti and
Okay.
making them draw cards. So I
Yeah,
think this is a very I wouldn't say easy combo pull off, but I can see myself being able to do this in a game.
Gotcha. And I mean, like I said, I think Burn has been undervalued. It's been underrepresented in the TCG. So the fact we're seeing some Burn combo cards, and there's cards in the format that want special conditions. So we
Mhm.
just have a different special condition that they're going to be applying with this post rotation format being the one we're focusing on.
Yeah, so I'm excited for those two fire type cards specifically.
Mm-hmm.
But Devin, you want to talk about another fire type card that's coming out in the set?
Yeah, so the one I'm most interested in for the fire types is Blaziken EX.
Mm-hmm.
Blaziken EX is a stage 2 fire type Pokemon, 320 HP. It has the ability Overflowing Spirit. Once during your turn, you may attach a basic energy card from your discard pile to any one of your Pokemon. So you can just recycle energy constantly with this. It doesn't have attack for Fire Carlos. It's Burning Assault 200. During your next turn, this Pokemon can't attack. So the 200 feels a little underwhelming, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're attacking with the Blaziken, I think you're already in a negative position anyway. You really want the Blaziken to help power up and accelerate energy for your other attackers in the game. So it's there. It's
Mm-hmm.
a stage 2, so it is going to take a little bit of effort to power up, even in a rare candy format. But I think even if you don't ever plan on attacking with this card, I think the ability alone is worth it.
Yeah, I know a lot of people paired this out with another card that we will talk about again in just a little bit. This There's a stage two deck that's out there that a lot of people are, well, including me, were excited about, and the Blaziken kind of helps with a lot of the shortfalls that the deck had, especially with the energy acceleration.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I really like about this card is that at first we thought like, oh, it's only fire, it's only fighting, because that's what you usually see Blaziken accelerate, but it's any energy.
Yeah.
So if you want to throw in a Monkey Dory and you have your dark energy in the discard, boom, Monkey Dory is set up without a manual tap, without attaching energy for your turn. So it can really help with a lot of other decks just as a tanky bench sitter. But at the
I
same time, it is probably going to be a bench sitter and a liability with with, when it gets knocked out. So we'll
I
see how it plays out.
I think this deck or this card will go in a lot of Terra decks because of its awkward attack of the Terra Pokemon's awkward attack costs, where you
Hmm.
don't have to feel as pressured to get those energy into your hand. You can just get the energy into the discard pile and then be able to accelerate from this discard pile.
Hmm.
Especially if it has a fire energy in the attack cost already, then you're already kind of preventing some even more awkwardness in the deck. So I think Terra, if you are running a Pokemon that is a Terra attacker, Blaziken might be a consideration just to look into whether or not it can help fix your attack costs.
Yeah, so we'll see how people get creative using this card in their deck. Being a stage two makes it a little difficult, but I wouldn't say it's out of the question at all.
Mm-mm,
So
by no
I
means.
know a lot of people when this card was introduced, there was a lot of hype behind it, and I just hope it can live up to that hype.
Yeah, and then I that's it for me in terms of fire types. I don't see anything else that we know of that's not a trainer Pokemon.
Yeah, I think that's it for fire. I think we're good to move on to water.
So there's a water type Pokemon that you were very high on when you were going through this list.
Yeah, and this is more on the gym leader challenge side of things, not really on the standard side. But I like this Ludicolo that's coming out, and really you can see I can see this play in maybe some stage one decks, water decks, maybe in tr- um that for alligator
Mm-hmm.
that a lot of people are playing. But it is a stage 2 140 water type Pokemon with the ability Vital Samba. Each of your Pokemon in play gets plus 40 HP, but the effect of the ability does not stack. So you only can use the ability once while on board. So I think this is gonna make Pokemon more tanky. I can
Oh
see
yeah.
this in a lot of defense heavy decks, but this I feel like this is gonna pair with the water GLC deck with the new Wailord coming out as well, having
Oh my gosh, the new Werelord have so much
240
HP.
HP. So yeah, new Wailord, 240 HP, Hydro Pump for 4 colorless energy, 10 plus. This attack does 50 more damage for each water energy attached to the Pokemon. So you're already at 240. Play the Ludicolo, you're at 280. And you know there's other HP modifiers out, especially in expanded format. Add Legarius Cape to this thing, you're at 340 HP.
Oh my god, giving up two prizes on that though, you might as well because you're at the same HP levels as two prizers typically anyway. So
And I'm sure there's other cards that can modify this HP that's not even Legarius Cape. Like we just need to find them. And then there's a lot of healing cards in GLC that you can use. So play Malolana, Hyper Potion, Super Potion, any potion.
I would say
Um,
this card does not care about the hyper potion to discard two energy cost either because you're just gonna have so much energy on this thing.
yeah. So you can do that. You can play um I was gonna say Cheryl, but then you have to discard all that energy.
Honestly, I
But
think Wailord in the standard format, I would love to see people experiment with this because Hydro Pump it has infinite has an damage cap, and just putting a whole bunch of water energy on a single prize Pokemon does not feel bad at all because there's so many ways to just get that energy back.
oh yeah, there's energy retrieval, superior energy retrieval, super rod's still a thing. Yeah, there's a bunch of recursion that we can pair with this Wailord. Obviously, I think you need to pair with the Baxcalibur as well,
Oh yeah,
just
for
to be
sure.
able to get it going. But I think a lot of people just want to play this card because the special illustration rare art is probably one of the best cards
It is
printed in a
absolutely
while.
gorgeous. Th- just don't beat around the bush. It is such a beautiful card, and it's such a great card. Like in terms of its
Yeah.
art.
So I know a lot of people are going to be chasing this Wailord just either for playability or even just for that special illustration rare. This is a great card. I like how it is a little balanced because it's a single prize, but it's a it's a stage one. There's lightning's very popular in this format right now, so it's going to get one shot if you go against either Maridon, Iron Thorns, the new Iono deck that's out there. So it's very balanced in my opinion. But yeah, GLC, I think this card is going to be phenomenal in that format.
Yeah, and then the only other water card that piqued my interest, I know it's bad, and I've been told it's bad, is the Veluza EX. It's a 210 basic HP water type Pokemon, and it has the attack for water colorless Purge Strike. So it does 120 base, and if you discard your hand, it does 120 more. I'm a player that typically plays with a low hand size anyway. Like I do not mind ripping a card off the top of the deck and seeing what happens. So 240 with almost no downside to me sounds fine, but I also understand 240 is not nearly enough with the fact that you're going to be playing without a hand.
I think you need to pair this with like Surfer Maniac. That way you know what you're going to be drawing off of. Or even Academy at Night, putting like a research on top or something to where you can get a hand back and be able to play the game going forward. Um, I would say Radiant Venusaur would be a great pairing for this, but the Radiants rotate, so you don't have a card with that ability anymore in format.
No. So it's an interesting attack. I know it's not good. I don't think it's going to be good, but it's an interesting attack nonetheless.
Yeah, we'll see if people can make a deck around this. I'm sure the other rogue deck creators out there are thinking of ideas to make this playable and make this a content worthy card. Hey, let us know. Let us know if you want us to build a deck around this. We can make this one of the first rogue deck videos when this set comes out. we'll put some time into this and we'll make it fun.
Alrighty, so that's it for the water types. Next up will be the lightning types. And in the lightning type, let's just be 100% honest, the lightning type is dominated by the trainer's cards, so we don't
Mhm.
really have much to talk about. But the one card I definitely want to highlight is the Tapu Koko EX. So
Mhm.
Tapu Koko is a 200 HP basic lightning Pokemon with a singular attack, Lightning Colors, Thunder Connect, 60 base, and then it's 20 more for each one of your bench Pokemon. The damage there isn't really, I think, going to be impactful. I mean, it definitely can be in the right deck because of Area Zero Underdefs, but it's also a free retreater. And I think
Yeah,
that is always a good value on a card.
I think the free retreat saves this card so much because at first glance, okay, yeah, it's 200 HP. That's kind of cool, I guess. The attack is mid at best, but having a easy pivot option makes this a I want to say at least a one of in a lot of lightning centered decks.
Or even decks
Almost
that run
maybe
lightning energy because of the Terra attack cost.
yeah. So I would say at maybe you can substitute this for the Mew EX and Miraidon, but the Mew EX helps with the draw. So,
Mm-hmm.
but then you get the two plus 20 HP. So I guess is whatever you feel is more worth it in your deck when you play Miraidon if you want this card or not. But yeah, having the free retreat is so important with this.
Yeah, so I mean, like I said, the lightning type in this set is super dominated by the trainers cards, and we already talked about majority of them already in a previous episode. So
Mhm.
did want to double dip on that. Um, so next up is Psychic. I know there's a card that you were very intrigued on.
Yeah, so there's a new Metagross coming out. I'll be honest, I'm more interested in Steven's Metagross whenever that gets released to us over here in the States. But there's a psychic version, regular Metagross, that um has a attack for 2 psychic called Joint Beam. It's 130, and then if you have Beldum and Metang on the bench, it does 150 more damage. So you can do up to 280 damage flat if you just have your bench set up. And the cool thing is you can play the metal version of Beldum and Metang with this. So you can have the Metal Maker Metang on the board, have the metal Beldum, but in this, yeah, probably the metal Beldum because of the 70 HP versus the 60 HP. And then this Psychic Metagross, and you can start recycling your Metagross attacks a lot. And two Psychic, that's not hard to power up. You can pair this with the Zatu and get this going in one turn so easily.
Yeah, I think the biggest downside of this deck is that you have to manage your bench in a certain way where even the Zatu engine I think would be a little too cluttered unless you put a Terra in play and then give yourself an area under depth size bench where then you can start playing a lot of different moving parts at once.
Yeah.
So it will be very difficult. I think the bench management for this deck is going to be the most important aspect if you do try this deck. But 2 energy, 280 on a single prize stage 2 is not bad at all.
No, I would say it's definitely going to be a fun rogue deck. Nothing super competitive, but if you're looking for a way to learn how to improve your bench management skills and your resource skills, I think this is a nice deck to play around with to increase that um that mechanic for you.
Mm-hmm. And then another psychic Pokemon I'm a little intrigued on. I don't know if this is just because I like the idea of damage counters or not. Is the Mimikyu EX?
Mhm.
So it has an attack, Mischievous Hands. It's a Psychic Colorless attack. Choose two of your opponent's Pokemon and put 3 damage counters on each of them. To me, I'm going back to that Espeon deck that we played a couple weeks ago,
Mhm.
where that this Mimikyu EX paired with the baby Espeon, and you're just psychic assaulting the damage that Mimikyu is able to spread across the board before your opponent takes it out. Because I'm willing to do this attack once or twice and give up 2 prizes for a single prizer to come in and just sweep the board.
Yeah, 190 is okay, but you can attach Bravery Charm to it and get 50 more damage or 50 more HP, make it a little more bulky. 240 is pretty not easy to knock out, but it's not hard to knock out either. So it's a nice sweet spot. And depending on what A spec you want to play, maybe even putting a hero's cape on this thing, make it 290, then it's definitely safe. So yeah, there's options, and I can see how this compare really well with that Espeon deck that you built in. I know you really enjoy playing that deck.
Hmm.
So maybe we can upgrade it, make it it's already post rotation proof too. So
I
this could
wouldn't
be
put this with Espeon EX by any means. I think Espeon EX runs a little differently. I would definitely pair this with especially psychic attackers that love damage counters on the board that does more damage based on the damage counters on the board, like the baby Espeon. I
yeah.
definitely think it's a different type of deck altogether.
Yeah, and we can fool around with that idea too once this all these cards are out. So that's could be another idea for us to showcase once in a couple weeks.
Hmm.
So I'm not really seeing any more psychic Pokemon. Is there any other psychic type Pokemon you want to touch on?
Not really. I mean, we've already talked about the Lily cards in the set, so we definitely want not to say they don't exist. We just don't want to give them any like another round of attention because they've already gotten a whole episode to themselves. So
Yeah.
next up would be fighting, and Dean, I'm gonna let you talk about the first fighting card on this list.
So it is not a secret. I'm really excited for Mammothwine EX. I think this can hit hard. I was actually talking to a person at my league last night about this, and they're like, "Yeah, Mammothwine's just so mid." I'm like, "I don't think so. I think it's a little more powerful than people were giving it to." He's like, "Well, what do you mean? It's like it doesn't hit hard." I'm like, "It hits for like 340." They're like, "What do you mean 340?" I'm like, "Well, it's 180 plus 50 for every stage two on
Plus
your bench."
40,
Like,
plus it's a modifier 40, but yeah,
yeah. So it's like you can if you have a full bench, you're adding 200 damage. So you
minimum.
can hit for 380 at the very most, and that's if you're not even playing with the Area Zero, um, which in this deck you're not. I think there's other stadium cards that you want to pair this with, but the ability where you can look for a Pokemon and just get that whenever you want, paired with Pidgeot EX, paired with either the Blaziken or even the Garganacl that's already out there. I feel like this is a very strong deck that's just waiting to have his time to shine. You can if you look at the Japanese um champions or city leagues, it's on there. It's not on there a lot, but you once in a while you do see Mamoswine do very well,
Hmm.
and with even winning a couple of these. So I'm excited. This is a very tanky fighting type Pokemon. I just want to get my hands on it and build this deck and just and keep practicing. This may be one of my first decks I play at a challenge after Atlanta.
Yeah, there's been definitely really solid lists in Japan for this deck and this archetype, paired up with was it the Luxray and the
Hmm.
was it Magnezone?
Cling Clang.
Kling Clang.
Because
That
they both have abilities where you can get them in the play without having the pre-evolutions.
yeah. So that just boosts your Mammoth Flying attacks even more.
Mhm.
Um, the next fighting Pokemon that I want to talk about is Lycanroc. We've talked
Oh,
about it
yeah.
a little bit in the past, and I've been toiling around with this card for the last 2 months almost. So Lycanroc is a stage 1. It is a fighting type. It has 120 HP. It has the ability Entangling Spikes. When you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon during your turn, you may attach up to 2 Spike Energy from your discard pile to this Pokemon. And the reason why that's important is because its attack is for triple colorless. So I'm going to jump all the way down to the bottom and I'm going to read what Spike Energy does. That
Mhm.
way it gives more context to the ability and the attack. So Spike Energy is a special energy card. And as long as this card is attached to a Pokemon, it provides one colorless energy. If the Pokemon this card is attached to is in the active spot and is damaged by attacks by your opponent, put 2 damage counters on the attacking Pokemon. And this stacks per Spike Energy.
Mhm.
So what you want to do with Lycanroc is you want to have Spike Energy in your discard pile to begin the game. So you want to be able to just discard it through Ultra Balls or Earthen Vessels or whatever other method you're thinking of. So that way, when you evolve the Lycanroc, you can auto just accelerate the 2 Spike Energy onto it, and then just attach another energy. And then its attack is Grabbing Fangs. It's triple colorless, and it's 40 plus, and this attack does 40 more damage for each damage counter on your opponent's active Pokemon. So the reason why I think this is a very interesting combination, we go back to the Maractus. If you hit into that Maractus and then I go behind you and be like, all right, here's a Lycanroc. That's 280 damage coming your way.
Oh yeah.
So there's different ways to get, and again, I've been playing around different ways to get damage counters onto my active Pokemon, on my opponent's active Pokemon. And with Lycanroc being a colorless attacker, there's so many different possibilities. The Mimikyu comes to mind where you're just putting damage counters all over the place. So Lycanroc, SP, and Baby Espeon could work because Espeon only needs 1 psychic energy. So there's a lot of funky combinations I'm thinking of that's really going to punish my opponent for having damage counters on their side. And I'm excited to try this out.
Yeah, I know. As soon as this card was revealed, you perked up right away. You're like, I want to build this deck. Let's make this happen. And you and me have been going back and forth with different ideas. So yeah, I think fighting is going to be a very strong archetype in this set. There's a lot of fun possibilities. There's some other like hops cards in here, but yeah, I think those two are really the two fighting type Pokemon we want to really spotlight with this set.
Mm-hmm.
So next will be Dark. Going through Dark, this one it's kind of getting foreshadowed or getting shadowed by the N cards as well because this is where N Zoroark's coming out, so that trade ability is coming back into the format. We've talked about it before. Great ability. I w- I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing this in non-N decks too, because just being able to draw through your deck is so powerful.
Oh,
But
trade's a broken ability. I don't care what you
yeah,
say. Trade's broken.
but I think we can talk about the new um Tyranitar a little bit. It's not the best stage 2 out there, but it has a very interesting ability called Daunting Gaze. While this Pokemon is in the active spot, your opponent can't play any item cards from their hand. So if we thought that Badoo was cracked, pair this with Tyranitar, you're you're not playing item cards if you have this deck.
Yeah, the only issue is it has been the active spot, and it's not really a card that you're going to be able to streamline very often. It is a stage 2. It has a attack for 150. Darkness colorless does, like I said, does 150, but discard the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck. So you get to mill them a little bit, and it's awkward because of the text. If this is in the active spot, if this was a bench setter and you can just item block your opponent from the bench, by far it would be one of those cards that you can easily put into a deck and make it happen. But
Yeah.
because it has to be in the active spot, you don't want your active not to be doing anything, and preventing item cards is not enough.
Yeah, so I'm sure someone will make a deck with this strategy. Not sure it's going to be us though.
No, I'm not so high on it like you are. But I'll be intrigued to see what happens with it.
Yeah. But other than that, I'm not really seeing any other dark type Pokemon. Granted, darkness type doesn't really get a lot of Pokemon introduced anyway, so it makes sense that this is a smaller card pool compared to the other types.
Hmm. And then the type after that is Magearna, or sorry, the Steel type, which to me, really the only highlight is the Magearna. That's not a trainer's Pokemon. And
Even the
this,
trainer Pokemon, I'm not really hype on the steel side of it. But
I
yeah,
mean,
that Mirgirna, as soon as I saw that, I thought this card is not necessarily broken, but that auto heal ability, as long as this Pokemon is in your active Pokemon, whenever you attach an energy from your hand to one of your Pokemon, you heal 90 damage to that Pokemon.
and then the attack with
That's
Spike
so
Trauma
good.
is always good too. Like You're doing
Yeah.
20 damage and drawing 2 cards. That's above what most spike draws are. So this is a really good mid game Pokemon.
Hmm.
Like you promote this up, you say, all right, go attack this Magearna, and then I'm gonna heal and draw.
And and it could be a nice pivoter for you, because it has one retreat cost. Put a skateboard on there, and then just keep that will be your Pokemon to start off with every turn. Attack your energy, you're healing off the damage. My question is, I want to make sure I'm understanding this. So with abilities like Teal Mask,
Yeah,
that's from your hand though, right?
yeah. If this
So
also
you
works
can
with like a Baxcalibur where you're constantly attaching energies from your hand, you would heal every single time.
so paired with the right deck, this can auto heal anything you have in play.
I mean,
So
that's
I
the
find
reason why
that
it's called auto heal. It's ability,
yeah.
which is
But
fun.
yeah, and I'm thinking about in GLC as well because I play a metal deck in GLC, and to be able to heal 90 damage from my Pokemon is massive. Pair
Yeah,
that with Crystal Cave, pair that with Malolana, like I can negate all the damage that my opponent has done.
yeah. No, it's a really good card. I think the attack is undervalued. I think Spike Draw is always an interesting attack. And the fact that if even if like you said mid game you put it up, you can't get it out because you don't want to sacrifice the retreat cost. You heal and then you spike draw for 20 poke, but you get 2 more cards in your hand. Like the hand draw itself is worth it.
I can see this played with Archaludon and making that even more tankier.
Oh yeah. Uh,
So, but yeah, Magearna always a nice card when it's introduced. Um, trying to see what other Pokemon are left in the to talk about. I'm not really seeing anything in Steel. Dragon, nothing really stands out to me
I
other
mean,
than the
there's card that
banner.
stands out, but it's a trainer's card, so we're not going to talk about it as much. In terms of
Yeah.
colorless, I think really the only colorless card that isn't a hop card is the Dunsparce EX.
Yes.
I really do like this card. It's a stage 1 colorless EX Pokemon. It has the attack adversity tail 60 times, and it is 60 times the amount of each of your opponent's EX Pokemon. And this is worded very differently than another card we're going to talk about in a little bit, where and this is a multiplier to the active.
Yes.
So if your opponent has a whole bunch of EXs in play, you're just doing a whole bunch of damage to your opponent's active, which is really, really good.
Yeah, it's not really good if you're going against single prize decks, but you're not really going to attack with the Dunsparce in that point because this is really going to be like a one off, and especially if you're already having the Dunsparce draw engine because we have the runaway draw. That's where this card is really going to fit well in.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
So
and then other than that, there's really no other normal types that I like. And then in terms
yeah,
of trainer cards, there's really only one that isn't a trainer card. I hate to say it that way, that we haven't already talked about, and it's Brock's Scouting.
yeah, this is actually a pretty good setup card.
Yeah, so Brock Scouting is a supporter that says choose one. Search your deck for up to 2 basic Pokemon, reveal them, and put them into your hand. Or search your deck for one evolution Pokemon and put it into your hand, shuffle your deck. So it's a really versatile card no matter whenever you get it. And I wouldn't mind using this turn 1 by any means.
Yeah, especially I would say for the basic Pokemon that are greater than 70 HP, because at that point you can't really use Buddy Buddy, but you can use Brock Scouting, set up those Pokemon. So one example I think of right off the top of my head is Turtwig, because when Torterra came out, everyone was like, "Oh, this is going to be a good deck. I can set this up using Buddy Buddy," and we're like, "Oh wait, we can't. It's 80 HP."
Mm-hmm.
Well, now we have a way around that. Brock Scouting set up your bench super easily now, and you're not really going to feel as behind versus a deck that can utilize Buddy Buddy.
Yeah, no, it's an undervalued card. It's going to see a lot. I think it's going to see a good amount of play because it has the mid to early to mid game versatility.
Yeah.
You don't really need it much late game because by then you should be set up. But the early to mid game is where this card's going to shine a lot.
Yeah, exactly. I can see this being like a 2 of in a deck just to make sure you can get going in the beginning to mid.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, not really
And
seeing anything else that we haven't touched upon.
no,
Oh,
I
I think Ruffian may be a nice supporter.
to me, Ruffian is going to be as good as the special energy in the meta.
Yeah, so what Ruffian says is discard a Pokemon tool and a special energy from one of your opponent's Pokemon. So
So,
if Lugia was still around,
oh
this,
yeah, but it's a single discard of the energy though.
yeah.
So again, to me, it's you have to hope that a Pokemon has a special energy in a tool, or you don't feel like you're getting as much value. But
Hmm.
even if you discard just one of those two, depending on the matchup, you could really put your opponent's Pokemon in a disadvantageous situation.
Yeah, and again, I'm thinking about Gym Leader Challenge because I did that last week. I think this card will be strong in that type of format
Oh
because there's
yeah,
special energies and Pokemon tools all over the place.
hmm for sure. So I mean, for me, the set is more than trainers Pokemon. I think the set has a lot of depth to it, and I'm excited to see what we can get out of this, especially because it's getting paired with a rotation with it. So it's going to be the first set of a new meta by all stretch of imagination. Not just a new set, but a new set with rotation. So there's a lot of change happening with it, and hopefully it's going to be able to establish itself within the card pool for the rest of that new year.
Yeah.
So I'm
So I'm
excited for that.
excited. Um, Definitely go out to these pre-release events. They are super fun. If you know someone that is wanting to learn how to play the game, I will say this is the time to go. We're getting into a post-rotation format, so a lot of stuff is going to be changing. This is a very nice deck to kind of get introduced with, in my opinion. The promo cards, which were actually released earlier today, are really good. It's basically they're all the trainer cards. So it's Hops, Snorlax, Lily's Rabombi, Iono's Kilowattrel,
And
and
Starmanitan.
Darmanitan.
Mm-hmm.
So really good options for the promos. I feel like these are if you're gonna pick up the game, this is the time to go.
Yeah. So shifting gears now, we talked about all these really fun cards, all these different things. We talked about hating of certain cards as well with some of the stadium or some of these cards as well. So
Hmm.
let's shift to continuation of the series we've been talking about, the How to Train a Rogue and our deck building series.
Yeah.
So this week, I want to focus on two types of cards that one has gotten more attention recently, and the other one, which I think is always undervalued but super important when you're building a deck. So the first one would be Pokemon tool cards.
Hmm.
So the reason why I say Pokemon tool cards have gotten a lot of attention recently is because one, they got their own classification. They used to be just regular trainer item cards. Now they have their own subset of cards, which is
Hmm.
a big deal when it comes to language of the cards, especially older cards. And then
And
go ahead.
I would say before we go on with that, it's also important to know erratas and rule changes. So pay attention to older cards because a lot of them will just think that tools are items, and that's where you as a player should know any updates and what the classification cards are. So tools are tools; they are not items. And a lot of times people are like, "Oh, I can just do this," and like, no, you can't. You have to know what the card does and how it affects even older formats.
Yeah, exactly. And to me, we're in a very friendly format for Pokemon tools. I can't think of a format where it's easier to find and easier and more encouraged than ever for Pokemon tool cards.
Oh yeah, this there's so many ways to get tools out. One of the easiest cards to think about is Arvin. It's such a powerful card. Yes, you're getting an item, but you're also getting a tool. And a lot of decks are just playing just couple tools just to make that card more
More valued.
just More value, yeah, it's like, you see a lot of Bravely Charms, Rescue Boards, and those are just, like, staple cards now in decks, and I will say even just, like, this time last year, you weren't seeing tools being utilized in decks, and now almost every deck has at least 1 tool card in there, mainly because I will say Forest Seal Stone is what changed everything.
Hmm. No, it definitely did. And then now, like you said, Arvin makes it super easy just to run one off tool cards because you can just get a Arvin super easily now,
Mhm.
especially if you're running 3 to 4 like most decks are.
Oh,
Um,
and there were decks that is what the main supporter was the Arvin. Like, we talk about Charizard EX. In the beginning, the deck wasn't just called Charizard, it was called Arvinzard because that's how important getting Arvin and getting what those tools and that item was. So, building a strategy to get these cards is super important now compared to just a couple years ago.
Absolutely. And then the other half of that equation I want to talk about are stadiums. Now, Dean and I have had a conversation multiple times over stadium usage.
Mhm.
And I have a certain stadium philosophy that's very different than Dean's when it comes to building my decks.
And I
So,
think that's because we both started playing at different times.
mhm.
So the formats we were in kind of shaped how we view stadiums and how to utilize stadiums in the decks.
Yeah. So for me, when I build a deck, I'm building a stadium that cannot benefit my opponent. So when I'm picking a stadium for my deck, I don't want my opponent to benefit from it. So I
Mhm.
don't like Town Store. I don't like Artisan. I don't like any of those stadiums where my opponent can get a free search. To me, if my opponent can benefit, I'm giving them a 61st or 62nd or 63rd card. And that is not my strategy.
Meanwhile, I grew up where a lot of the stadiums that Devin are talking about are not the best stadiums, if not they're probably one of the worst stadiums. So I'd rather be more efficient and get my board set up or get my win condition set up with the stadium I have. But I like playing Artisan. I like playing Town Store. Those were what helped me get my win condition going. Example for me is like I am a very big cloth player. And when I played this deck in Charlotte, I needed that Town Store to win all my games. Yes, it gave my opponent a way to shuffle their deck or get the tool that they need, but I value my setup way more than that because I knew if I can get set up, it didn't matter what my opponent can do because they're not going to be able to come back to what I was doing because I want to knock out their Pokemon.
Mm-hmm.
So it just comes from our when we both played the game really competitively and just how we see deck building in itself, like the same concept of stadiums, we see different options in the same deck. So when we talk about the rogue deck of the week, we both had different ideas of what stadium should go in that deck.
Yeah. And the stadium piece to me, not every deck needs a stadium, but when you do pick a stadium, pick the stadium that gives you the most impact.
Hmm.
Now, like we talked about, we both have two very different philosophies on what impact means to us. To me is I want to benefit me and not benefit my opponent. Where to Dean is I want my stadium to help me get to my win con. Both are very, very valid philosophies. Just make sure you build the rest of your deck that matches that philosophy, or your
Hmm.
stadium is just going to be a card with limited value.
Yeah, and know what the stadium pull is, know what the purpose is for your deck, and just don't put one in there because like, oh, everyone's playing the stadium. If it doesn't work for your strategy, find one that's more fitting.
Mm-hmm.
And also don't be afraid to experiment too. Another example when I did well with cloth at a regional, I was actually copying my friend's deck and I was missing a certain card. So instead I threw in collapse stadium in there because I'm like, oh, I can see value because I want to get that squawkabilly out. on my board, so I'm not giving my opponent an easy two prizer because back then I was playing more of a like a 3-4 line of cloth,
Mm-hmm.
and that saved me in so many matches, and that was a off the whim decision, and it worked out for me. But it would have been not smart of me to play a card like Acuity or something that wasn't going to be beneficial to that deck. So you have to know the card pool, know your strategy very well, and take risk with this just the stadium choice that you do make.
Yeah, and then another piece that I will say when it comes to putting a stadium into your deck, to me, knowing what other decks are wanting to run is adding another card to your deck.
Mhm.
So if you're going to run, we've been using the evolutions as recently, right? If you're going to run a Terra deck, maybe you don't run Area Zero Underdeaths because
Or
your
not as many.
or or not as many because your opponent is going to be running them.
Mhm.
Take advantage of their stadiums as much as they're taking advantage of it, right? Give yourself a 61st or 62nd card. That stadium is a very flexible slot because all because you don't put it into play doesn't mean you can't take advantage of it. So
Yeah.
sometimes when you pick your stadiums, you need to know what the meta around you is. Like, what is the popular stadiums? Because if you run 4 town stores and every other deck is running 4 town stores, well, once one person puts a town store in, the other 6 or 7 copies out of all 120 cards on the board are now just Ultra Ball fodder. They're dead
Mhm.
cards when you pull. So be very, very cautious and very aware of the meta you're participating in. So that way your stadiums can be even more impactful when you do put them into play.
And I think you brought up another point. Don't be afraid to use your opponent's stadiums.
Yeah.
Obviously, be cautious. Know your deck. A good example is Pokestop. Everyone falls into that trap. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, there's a Pokestop in play. Even if it's not mine, I got a Pokestop. If you're not playing a lot of item cards, I wouldn't want to spend that Pokestop.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's going to benefit you, yeah, go ahead, play it. And there's a strategy with that too, where like, okay, my opponent has like an artisan in play. I have some basic Pokemon that don't have roll boxes in my deck that I want to get out. I want to play my opponent's artisan, take advantage of my opponent's stadium, and then replace it with my own stadium. And you can use two stadiums in one
Yes.
turn. You are
Yes.
allowed to do that in that order.
Yes. Take advantage and then bump. Absolutely. Again, sequencing matters. So that's always a very good piece. So again, a little bit of philosophy when it comes to stadium choices, a little bit of philosophy and understanding of what the role of tool cards can be in decks. We didn't want to go into much detail because we're entering a post rotation format. We want to generally talk about the concept of these two types of cards because I think, especially when rotation coming around the corner, they're going to carry a lot more value than they normally would. When
Yeah,
that card pool shrinks is when those extra spots really matter.
exactly. I will say one last advice with when it comes to at least the stadium aspect is that remember if you have the same stadium in hand, you can't bump the same stadium in play. So if
Mm-hmm.
you're going against a deck and you both play area zero under depths, once that as Devin mentioned before, once that stadium is in play, you can't bump it. So I know a lot of beginner trainers think they could because like, oh, it's not my stadium, it's my opponent's stadium. Well, it's the same card. So
Yep.
just be mindful of that rule and just if you find yourself in that situation, think just you got to change. Like, okay, this is not a stadium anymore. This is ultra ball fodder, or this is just something to go into my discard pile.
Mm-hmm.
So be adapting to what the board state is when it comes to stadium play. And then same thing with tools. You can only attach one tool per Pokemon.
Unless
So
something says you can't.
which there's only like two Pokemon right now that can do that.
I I
So,
can't wait for Tool Drop to come back. Just saying.
oh, I love Tool Top. It's just never been good.
Yeah.
But remember, be mindful of when you attach your tools to certain Pokemon because sometimes you have a choice. Okay, which one's the better choice? And you just have to
Mhm.
see what will work. Luckily, right now we're in a format where like you can't play Lost Vacuum if you think that was not the right decision. But in post rotation, we don't have a cards like that. Once you attach a tool, it's on there.
Yeah,
So be mindful when you play these cards down. It's all about your sequencing, and it's all about the board state that you're in. And just trust your gut. You're the trainer, you made this deck, you know what these cards do. Just go with it and just learn from the experience.
absolutely. And speaking of trust your gut, you're the trainer, you're the one that built the deck. I want to talk about the road deck of the week because I built it. I did like we theory craft back and forth, but then I'm like, yeah, let's build it. And then you ended up playing it, and I'm very interested in seeing how you thought about my deck selection and how my card choices are. But before we get into that, the deck of the week we're talking about is Vaporeon EX. So we're continuing with the Prismatic Evolution series
Mhm.
that we're doing. This week is Vaporeon EX. Vaporeon EX is a Stage 1 Water Pokemon. It has 2 attacks, one for a Water Colorless, and it does 60 to all your opponent's EX in play. We'll talk about why that matters in a minute. And then the second attack is for Water, Fire, Lightning, 280, and your Pokemon can attack next turn. So, with that being said, the my thought process of this deck initially was, oh, 60 spread, cool, sets up damage. Not so fast, my friend.
Yeah, we we learned this the hard way. I will say that.
I mean, it took us a couple times to read the card to know what the card does. Because
Yeah.
initially, when you read through the card really quickly, you're thinking, oh, 60 times the amount of EXs in play, very similar to the Dunsparce card we talked about earlier. And like, no, it's 60 spread, which
Mhm.
is great, except for one very important mechanic in the game right
Yeah. So there's a thing called Terra Pokemon, and they have bench barrier, and we're doing damage and not damage counters. So
now. So that's
Vaporeon is having a bad time right now.
yes, and it says EX. So like the Luminian Vs we see, the Rotom Vs we see, don't get touched either.
Yeah, and we
So
we thought that at first too. We're like, "Oh, this is perfect. We'll just get all the support Pokemon." We're like, "Oh wait, the only one that we can really hit consistently is Fezandipiti."
yeah, pretty much. So I'm
So
like, all right. So after reading that, then we're like, all right, let's build a deck around the second attack. 280, nothing to scoff at by any means.
oh no, absolutely. It's a great attack. You see that in the Flareon deck that's actually doing fairly well right now. So yeah, 280. Yeah, it's a little awkward to power up, but there's a lot of ways to get that in by turn two.
Yes. So before we get into the trainer side of that, I want to round out the Pokemon lineup in the deck because it's really not that long. So we are running a 3-3 line of Vaporeon in this deck. The EVA choice is EVX because the attack cost is the same. So even if you can't evolve to Vaporeon, you can still attack 200 with the EVEX.
Mhm.
It does run a 2-2 line of Palkia, Origin Form Palkia VSTAR because of the attack and because of the ability. The VSTAR ability allows us to power up water Pokemon, and Vaporeon is a water Pokemon. So
Mhm.
we'll be able to power up 2 different Pokemon at the same time with that ability. And then lastly, the support Pokemon, we have Fezandipiti EX because why not? It's such a good card. Honestly, it's an auto include in every list I'm making until it rotates out. And then Radiant Greninja because the amount of energy cards that we are playing, it doesn't hurt to use those energy cards as a fueling of your draw support. So I
Yeah.
run 12 total Pokemon. That's it.
Yeah, and I will say anytime you're playing Palkia V-Star, Rating Greninja should just be an auto include because it fills up the substate or the
Subspace.
V-Star ability to if you put water energy in the discard, use the ability, power up your water Pokemon any way you like. It just goes hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, when you told me how really thin your Pokemon lineup was, I was caught off guard at first, but it makes sense. It's just very streamlined. We know
Yes.
what we want to do, and we don't want to mess around with any other cards to achieve that.
Exactly. And then in terms of item cards and supporters, I run 4 Ultra, 4 Nest, 2 Tera Orb. I'm running Earthen Vessel. I'm running 2 Night Stretcher, a Super Rod.
Mhm.
The kind of the basic things. Um, in terms of supporters, I'm running the Ionos. I'm running Research. I'm running 3 Crispin. I
Mhm.
went really hard into the Crispin because I really want to try to power up that awkward attack cost on the Vaporeon turn 2 and almost every single time I can. And then I ran a couple Surfers because it's a switch and a draw. And with Vaporeon's secondary text on the second attack, you want to be able to switch and pivot as much as you can. So there's
Mhm.
a lot of switching cards in there. And then I run one of Kieran because it's a switch and it's an attack modifier. And I really
Mhm.
like that flexibility. And when it matches, you actually get to see the fact that I get to figure out which option is the better one. And then lastly, talking about tools and stadiums, I ran Rigid Band to attach to the Vaporeon so they take 30 less damage from attacks. And then I also ran Calamity Mountain, which reduced the HB of my opponent's stage 2s. And again,
No, Gravity Mountain.
Gravity Mountain. And that was because if I'm going to have a stadium in play, I wanted to harm my opponent. And right now we're in a very heavy stage 2 meta.
Mhm.
And I'm not running any stage 2s. So that's just there to mess with my opponent. If my opponent doesn't like it, he has to bump it. And if my opponent's bumping it for an Area 0 underdef, sweet, thank you very much. So I was in a win-win when it came to my stadium selection, I thought.
Yeah, I played with the deck. I thought the way you built it was very streamlined. Um, I I know you had more success with it than I did. I I just happened to hit Dragapult when I played it. So the secondary effect for Vaporeon did not work. Only on the active, which I hit into the active.
Yeah.
Um, I will say I almost won the game. I had game in hand, but so did my opponent. They just were able to get 4 prize cards off of me. I just didn't hit the rigid bands, so I couldn't prevent the damage.
Mm-hmm.
But hitting for that 280 with the Vaporeon felt really nice into that Dragapult EX. I kind of made them sweat and make them get the cards they need because they only had 1 card in hand, but 2 Dragapults in play. So I made them use their resources. But yeah, it's very different. I know we have our thoughts on Vaporeon as a card.
I mean,
Uh,
I will say it. If you were going to dance around it, I would say it. It's a it's a card in the meta that's very poorly positioned.
yeah.
If this card was not printed with the Terra Pokemon rule, it would be significantly better.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
because the Terra rule exists, it is honestly a very bad card. And I was, I'll be honest, when I was challenged with making this deck, I was not looking forward to it because I'm like, this attack sucks, and I've already done the second attack once already with the Flareon deck, so I
Hmm.
wasn't really excited on making the deck a second time. And then you kind of talked me into maybe because of rotation, add a Radiant card, add a VSTAR, have some fun with it. And then I'm like, you know what? Okay, let's do that. And honestly, I did enjoy playing with the Palkia, with the Vaporeon, and seeing those synergy lines. So I'll be honest, it doesn't feel great playing Vaporeon, but I did have fun playing it for a couple matches.
Yeah, if more non-Terra EX were more prevalent, this will be all over the place. This will help our strategy so much. Even with the Manaphy in play, not a lot of decks are playing Manaphy, but not being able to hit Rotom, not being able to hit the Luminions. You can hit Squawkabilly, but you have to hit a deck that's kind of more aggro. The really good deck that will take advantage of Vaporeon is Miraidon because they play a lot of EXs, but then they're hitting you for weakness. So
Yeah.
it's like you said, it's not well positioned. It's a fun concept, but with how strong Terras are, you're going to see a Terra before you see a regular EX.
Exactly. So it was fun to play with. I I challenged myself. I built the deck. I got some results. I went 2-0 with it. The matches I played with, I got lucky. I'll be completely honest. The latter was very fortunate to me versus not being very fortunate to you. But it's just sometimes you want to play the card because it does look like a challenge and it is a challenge, and sometimes that brings out your skill. It
Hmm.
challenged me in building the deck in a way that I never thought I would be able to.
And sometimes you just need cards like that to help you, especially when we're doing this deck building series. Go ahead and build decks. Like, we're not just doing this just so we can talk. Like, we want to help you all. And the best way to really improving your skills is by just doing it.
Yeah,
So take our experience with Vaporeon, knowing that it's not well positioned. We tried our best with it. We did win some games, but we also lost some games. So go out, experiment. Don't be afraid. Let us know how you can. Let us know if you can make Vaporeon work. Like, put in the comment below in the video. Like, hey, I thought of going this route with Vaporeon and it worked for me. Send us your deck list. Let us know. Like, we are building these from scratch, and with the understanding we're not the best deck builders at all. So we want to learn alongside y'all.
yep, absolutely. And that's the fun of deck building, right? I sometimes I do want to. I just copy someone's list because I just want to play with a card. And there's times where I'm like, "Ooh, this card's interesting. Let me build it. Let me play
Hmm.
around with it. Let me struggle with it. Let me have fun with it." And you never know what happens once you get out of the science lab of a deck building session.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's this week's Rogue Deck Showcase. The video will come up Friday afternoon around noon. So be on the lookout for that. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. You'll see whenever these videos come up, put the notifications on, and as soon as it's live on YouTube, you can watch it right then and there.
Absolutely.
So that's this week's episode. Any other last thoughts about Vaporeon, about our deck building series, or even about Journey Together before we head out?
No, I'm very intrigued. Like, I think with pre-releases coming around the corner, it's always going to be fun opening, playing with new cards. I don't go to pre-releases. I don't have a shop near me. But I always enjoy going on to the live account, be able to play with the new cards and have some fun with it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I know, like, when I did go to pre-releases, my wife loved them. She loves opening packs. She has no idea really how to play. She knows the basics, but she did pre-releases because she enjoyed it. Those are fun. Those
Mm-hmm.
are always, honestly, some of the most fun nights I've ever done in Pokemon. So definitely go out to your local pre-release for the set. This is, like Dean said earlier, this is a great set to jump into it if you're trying to learn or just trying to get back into it. Rotation gives the card pool a brand new perspective and new cards, a new mechanic worth of cards. That these trainers Pokemon are going to be so much fun to play with.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited to see what's going to happen. And honestly, I'm excited to see what the format and what the meta will unfold for us in the coming weeks and months.
Yeah, me too. I can't wait to get my hands on these cards. I've talked to my buddies about some opportunities that we may do, especially with this channel. We're actually thinking about streaming post rotation content. So let us know if this is something you all are interested in. We got a couple decks in mind that we want to stream. It will be on a Friday night. So let us know if what decks you would like us to do. Obviously, we're gonna try to go towards the rogue side of things if we can, but we'll play some meta decks to see how these cards in Journey Together go with what we've already seen. So let us know. I'm excited. I've been talking to my friends, seeing how we can make this happen. We'll provide more info once we get stuff finalized, and hopefully we can get this going. But yeah, let us know if you're interested in a live stream here on YouTube. And from there, I think we're good to go.
Yeah, no. Hopefully everyone enjoys their pre-releases, has great pools, and let us know what great cards you guys get. That's all I can say.
Yeah, and if you pull that Wailord, we may be talking.
You may be talking. I'm not going to pay for that.
So, but thank you for listening to this week's episode. Like, subscribe, put on your notifications. Thank you for everyone that's been subscribing to us lately. Our channel has grown since we started doing these video things. So thank you very much. But I think we're good to go. So until then, have fun playing those sneaky decks.
Bye, guys.